What are you the 1% of? According to my smartwatch, I'm in the top 1% of step count in the past 7 days. Wild and also boring. I am the 7th generation in my family with the same name. At the end of my name I legally have a 7. Every generation of my family going back to the 1700s has only one male and we all have the same name. I figured I have to be in the top 1% of deaf guitar players worldwide. I heard completely fine for like 25 years and spent 19 years of that to practice guitar playing. Been legally deaf for 3 years now and still can play well, muscle memory. I kinda want to start a band called Deaf Metal or something. You have to watch The Sound of Metal. It is a movie about a drummer who starts to lose his hearing. Actually a great movie on its own right, but you would get it more than most would. After your comment I watched the trailer and held back tears after. It's pretty much the same stuff I went through. I am not sure if I'm able to watch the whole movie. Hits me in the feels way too much. Probably less than 1%, but I'm sucrose and fructose intolerant. No fruit, candy, ice cream, even some veggies for me. Now that is very rare. Friend. I have fructose malabsorption and am lactose, soy, almond, and egg intolerant. I was just telling my so that I have the very mild superpower of being able to identify rogue onion in my meals by the feel of it against my teeth, without actually chewing it. I am a pilot. In the USA about 0.01% of the population has a pilot's license. I am also an amputee, which in the USA is about 1% of the population. Not sure what percent of the populace are amputee pilots, but it's got to be pretty small. Got my wisdom teeth pulled. One side grew back over a year from a fragment left. Dentist published an article about it and was so happy. I was not with another oral surgery. My mom had her wisdom teeth pulled out, and they all grew back again. Dentist never seen anything like it, lol. I have small intestinal cancer. The type is the same as colon cancer. But where it's located is less than 1% of worldwide diagnosis per year. But I've signed papers for 11 different oncologists to be able to access my records to see what works, what doesn't, etc., because they just don't get enough examples of it. Kind of hit or miss on procedures to work with, which treatments first, which type of chemo, etc. I've also said that if it ever reaches a point where I'm terminal and common treatments just won't/don't work anymore, I'm willing to go all guinea pig. Depending on exactly where it is, because of the veins coming off of your mesenteric artery to feed the small intestine, it usually isn't operable. So you are strictly on chemo and radiation. If the heavy levels don't do it, then you get to go on low-dose chemo daily for however long it works. Then it eventually doesn't. Currently, according to my last PET scan, the tumors have disappeared. They won't say remission, just that it seems to be dormant right now. I'll take it. Alpha-gal allergy. I was bitten by a Lone Star tick and now I'm allergic to any kind of mammal meat. Most cases last between 6 to 8 months, mine appears to be permanent after a decade. Uneasy face. I can't even eat something that's been prepped/cooked on the same surface as beef or pork in restaurants. Waitstaff isn't too fond of me, lol. My mom has this. She got it in the 1980s and her doctor insisted she was crazy because nobody's allergic to meat. When the alpha-gal research hit a few years back, she felt so vindicated. I'm in the 1% for people with narcolepsy. I believe it's 0.05% of America and 0.04% for the world. I have narcolepsy too. I am constantly disappointing people by not randomly falling asleep like in the movies though. Same. First question I get asked every time. I worked as a school janitor one summer as a teen and the one full-time janitor had the sort of narcolepsy like in the movies. It was bizarre. He fell asleep while climbing a ladder and thankfully I was spotting him and caught him. He fell asleep pushing the floor buffer, he fell down and it just went off across the gym floor. This was a long time ago and I hadn't thought about that dude in ages. Hope he's doing alright. My daughter was the first in Canada to have her cord blood harvested for stem cells. They were to be used for a bone marrow transplant for her brother. As a side note, my son was diagnosed with what was then called JCML. A child leukemia occurring in about 0.001% of all childhood leukemias. The survival rate I believe was in the 1 percentile range. This is fascinating. I hope everyone was okay. I had an ear infection travel up what would have been an otherwise asymptomatic formation of my skull called arachnoid granulation until it finally reached my cranial cavity. It took a literal team of the best doctors, and surgeon, neurologist, multiple neuroradiologists, from Northwestern University Hospital and the University of Pennsylvania to first diagnose me and then treat me. I was absurdly lucky to have a friend of the family who is a doctor who was able to call in a favor to get the entire neuroradiology team at UPenn studying my numerous CTs and MRIs. The head of neuroradiology at UPenn told him I have the most unique looking skull he's ever seen. Talk about damning with faint praise. When they finally had a diagnosis, my aunt pulled my skull CT scan up and said, "Do you see that white spot? That's fluid. That's infection, it shouldn't be there. You're very lucky you haven't contracted meningitis, this had been happening for 10 years, undiagnosed. And do you see this black space here? That's air. That should absolutely not be there. Do you ever fly?" I responded yes, all the time, for work, for concerts, regularly, once a month or more. "Well, you absolutely can't fly until this is fixed. Every time you've flown in the last 10 years and the cabin pressurized, that air could have expanded and shifted your brain off of midline and you'd have been dead immediately, without knowing anything." They removed an L-shaped infected portion of my skull about 2x6 and replaced it with a titanium mesh plate after sewing the tear in my ear canal shut. It resolved the problem and I haven't had any issues since. I can now fly. Edit, because people are asking. The symptoms were fullness, pressure, and the feeling of fluid in my ears. It lasted years and several aunts misdiagnosed me. Finally I asked one to put in a tube and it drained continuously for a month. The aunt I was going to, not the one who diagnosed me, thought it was a cerebrospinal fluid leak, and ordered me to have emergency surgery for a cerebrospinal fluid leak that didn't exist. He had taken a sample of fluid for testing but demanded I have what amounted to exploratory brain surgery for a condition that didn't exist. I was sitting on an operating bed as they were about to place pre-op antibiotics when I got a call from the aforementioned drive friend of the family who said they don't know what the fuck they are talking about. Leave now. I got so many shit looks from the team of surgeons that had been assembled to cut my brain open to fix a problem that didn't exist. 2 days later I got a phone call from my aunt saying the results of the fluid sample came back. It wasn't CSF. No apology. No explanation. No nothing.